Hey, Joe.
Hey, Ma.
Yeah, this month we're talking about April showers bring May flowers and getting into a two-part series. In April, we're going to focus on sort of the April showers side of things and what is darkness, what is sadness, what is depression, and can we redefine it and have a different perspective about it?
Yeah, I think it's super exciting to get to talk about these things. We don't intend for the month to be doomy and gloomy at all, but we are going to talk about some of our sadder experiences and just get into kind of some tools that we've used and how that will eventually bring us to May. We'll talk about how we can get to a garden full of flowers, but
yeah, it's good. It was a great conversation and talking about, I feel like we really got to know you through the things that you shared, pretty vulnerable stuff. And then, I got to share. And so we'll break it up into a few different episodes. But we're excited just for you, the listener, to be able to drop in and know that, hey, if you're in a dark time, if you're going through some stuff, you're not alone. And hopefully through Joe and I sharing in a pretty vulnerable way some of the darker things that we've been through and really getting into the details of what we experienced during those times, that you'll find a place where, you're not alone, that people can relate to what you're going through, and that it's not all darkness, that there will come a time where there's light. And we'll get to sort of the tools, some of the more specific tools that we learned in May. We're going to talk about some quantum mechanics, and we're going to talk about how science is showing us that we are co-creators and we can work our way to creating the life that we dream of, and how we can do that. We're going to get into that in May. But in April, we're just going to frame the conversation as far as what did we go through? How did it feel? How can we make it so that this time of, quote, darkness is not just bad. It's not just end all, be all, it's not the end of our story. Mm-hmm. And how can we turn it around to be something beautiful? So join us for the conversation each week. We're going to share some deep stuff each time, and we hope and pray that you will be able to drop in and feel loved and feel connected and feel like you have a place where, you can be real and you can find home with us.
Let's get into it.
I love us.
It's so fun.
This project is so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that we are having fun, because this is a pretty heavy topic this month, talking about darkness. So we decided on April showers bring May flowers. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So April showers. I thought maybe we could start off with maybe like a little kind of interview style, just me and you. I would like to share maybe some of the dark times.
Yeah.
At the same time, I want to be really careful, because I don't, I'm learning a lot about manifesting and focused intention and all of that stuff. So I want to, ride this balance. I don't want our listener to feel like this is going to be this depressing month,
It's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah. On the contrary, I really want to be able to share some of the dark things or grieving things or sad things or whatever we have traditionally or historically labeled as dark or sad or whatever, so that we can kind of frame this moment of rethinking our perspective on, quote, darkness, and reconsidering a new definition of darkness, and that it's not what we think it is, or it's not what the world would say it is, or it's not what, religion says it is. And so but I also, I'm part of this group, and this one person made a comment one time about, why is everybody so happy? Like, we should be calling out the wrongs in the world. We should be like,
gosh.
Not that they didn't want, but they were like, why are you happy nonstop? Like, it seems disingenuous. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, it's unrealistic to be happy all the time. Right. And there's why, and it seemed like that to her, that we were always just positive. It's this like Rethinking God group that I'm in.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So she was like, why is everybody like just always on the bright side of life? Like, why aren't we, as quote Christians, why aren't we hurting with the people who are hurting, or, that kind of thing. And it made me think, like, I don't know how we can sometimes, I guess, candy coat our hard times or whatever, or like, so I want to ride this fine line between like diving into and, just like getting lost in sadness or whatever. Like, I don't want to do that, but I also don't want to candy coat and sugar, make it all unicorns and rainbows. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I want to be vulnerable and honest and open with grief and gross things tragedy and trauma and, all the things. But at the same time, I want to be always finding the hope, finding the joy, finding the light. We're going to talk in May about the light. So we're going from dark to light. We're going from showers to flowers. And I want our listener to hang in there with us and really like understand that we have these moments of tragedy, trauma, darkness, grief, whatever. But our goal is not to sit here and complain about it. Our goal is not to sit here and just woe is me about it. There is no victimhood here. There's only life here.
Yeah.
And even in our darkness, there is life. And
Absolutely.
that will be our goal this month, to find life in those dark moments and to recognize, where is God? Where is God in this dark moment? Did God cause it? Did God allow it? Is he present? Is he just poof, he's gone? He's somewhere out in the cosmos, disconnected from my pain? Because it sure can feel like that.
Absolutely.
And so let's explore it, and let's find out, and let's ask God, where are you?
Yeah. I think it's really hard for us to find God in those moments, in my personal opinion, when you grow up in certain religious areas, because I think specifically religious and non-religious people view darkness differently. But it still causes kind of the same set of emotions. So religion kind of looks at darkness and is like, specifically darkness is viewed as sin in the church. And they're like, oh, you're living in darkness. That's been spoken over me, where they're like, oh my gosh, you're just living in darkness. You need the light of God. And then people who are non-religious are viewing darkness as negative. Anything. Negativity, if it's something that's bad that's happening in your life, well, that's negative. Because I feel sad. My life is now sad. Like, your emotions and your situation kind of defines how you view everything. And it just kind of coats, how we can sugarcoat sadness. It kind of sadness coats your entire perspective. And I've seen both things happen, or experienced kind of both things. But I think it's powerful to recognize that darkness is more of a time of dormancy. I know we talked about, of just like, things grow best underground. That's where the roots really start to take place. And if we are respectful of that time, and if we are kind and loving to ourselves and to other people in that time, I think it really gives space for, hey, when May comes around, whenever that is in your life, it may not take 30 days. It may literally be years. But when light does come to your life, what flowers are going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
How have you taken care of yourself, your perspective, your mindset, all the things in that time of dormancy, to where when those beautiful light days come around, what kind of garden are you going to grow?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be full of weeds from the negativity that you spread everywhere, from the negativity that you allowed into your life? I don't want to make anyone feel invalidated in that. Like, absolutely, grief is a really serious thing. And absolutely, you need to grieve. You need to go through that loss. But how can you also, with that, recognize the beauty of life? Like, we wouldn't have to grieve, like, for instance, like the loss of life, if it wasn't a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful thing that we got to experience life. It's a beautiful thing that we are gifted the presence of another person's life. Like, if we didn't grieve about, somebody that we lost, how much sadder would that be?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, like a life without love is sadder than a life grieving the loss of love.
Yeah.
Is what I think I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk about, here's the interview part. We'll do you first. Can you think about a time that was really dark for you, one that you feel comfortable, opening up about? Because I may dig a little deep into it. So make sure you don't choose something willy-nilly. Because you know me, I'll dig.
Oh, yeah.
But is there a time that you're willing to talk about that, you felt just like questioning a lot of your beliefs, and you felt alone, and you felt there was no light? And, if you can kind of take yourself back to that time and take yourself into that, and pick one again that you're willing to kind of talk about and share some specifics of what was going on and what you were feeling. And
That's a really hard question. I've got a situation laying on my heart that I don't know how comfortable I am talking about it, but I really want to, because I really want to bring that situation to light, I think, because it deserves to be, it deserves to know that it doesn't hold power in my life. Does that make sense? I don't know. Let me sit with that for a second. I think I might choose that situation in a sense of a broader time. So I was 18 and a half when I moved out of my parents' house. And I moved out on not the greatest terms. I got approved for an apartment without their knowledge and said, hey, I'm moving out in 3 weeks. Just so everybody knows, that's not how you tell your parents you're going to move out. If you want to have a positive reaction.
I mean, it's one way.
It is one way. Personally, in my house, was not the way to go about it. But it's what I did. So I live with that now.
Depends on the parents, I guess.
That's true. So I had 3 weeks. I packed up in 15 days, moved out into my apartment. And, I would say for the first few months, if not more, I don't know, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm free, like as everybody I'm sure feels when they move out of their parents' house. And it was like this amazing feeling, and I can go choose my own church. I grew up religious, so I can go choose my own church. I can go do all the things. And within that time, after that period, there was about 2 years of just like, it was hard. There was a lot of heaviness, I think is the right word, because I had just gotten out of the house, and the house that I lived in holds a lot of generational trauma. So it's just stuff that's been passed down over time. And so just so everybody knows, when you get out of those types of situations, your body enters a time of rest. Because you've been on kind of this high alert frequency for quite a while. So you get out and you're exhausted. So I was tired all the time. I was depressed a lot because I was dealing with a whole bunch of things. And that left me super, super vulnerable. So I got
And you went from living in a household full of sisters and people and noise, talking and, you know, just all the things to by yourself in an apartment. Alone. Quiet. Like just that transition from like noise, constant noise to quiet is shocking.
It was crazy.
To the system. It can be really hard.
Yeah. And the specific apartment I was in, it was the lower level and it was kind of between some other buildings and it was really dark. Like the literal apartment itself was dark. And it was just a really hard time. I got taken advantage of a couple of times, and it was just, there's some really tough situations that I went through in there, where I started running away from God, and it didn't take very long, which I think surprised me, because I was like, I'm going to go to all these churches, because we were church shopping before I moved out for like years. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go find my church. I'm going to get planted. It's going to be fantastic. When you're an introvert with social anxiety, church shopping is really hard.
By yourself, yeah.
And when you go into it and you're all excited about church, I will say the churches that I went to were good. They weren't like bad churches. But nobody talked to me. I think it was also like, I wasn't extraordinarily welcoming. Like I didn't go in and I'm like, hi, my name's Joe. Like, but you know, you kind of go in, service ends, you leave real quick. I'm just kind of one of those people. Excuse me. So for me, after 6 months being in a church and having, you know, one person talk to me, I was like, I'm done. I'm over it. I'm having so much fun doing this podcast with you. Thank you so much for being open to the idea of a podcast. Just a project that is centered around vulnerable conversations and showing up for other people.
Yeah, it's a joy, and I'm so glad we live in a time where we can create content like this and hopefully bless someone who's looking to engage with other people on topics that really mean something to our human experience.
So if this episode has been helpful or entertaining in some way, would you consider buying the show a coffee?
Yeah, it's a fun way to support the project and help us know that it blessed you. If buying a coffee, though, isn't something you can do right now, we'd love it if you would rate and share the show episodes on your own social media and help us reach more people.
Yes, we'd really appreciate all the prayers, good vibes, whether you buy us a coffee or share the content. We just want you to know we value you and your presence, and we can't wait to see where this project goes.
All right, check the show notes for links on how to buy us a coffee, but for now, let's get back to the conversation.
This God thing is not working out for me. I'm over it. So I left church, and I didn't go back for a long time, probably a year to a year and a half. And within that time, I still professed to be a Christian. I still professed, oh my gosh, yeah, I believe in God. And I still think I believed in a God. I just don't know that I believe that he cared. Because the previous events in my life, specifically like right after I moved out, I dated somebody for a whole week and a half, and there was he basically just didn't respect any boundaries that I laid down. And then right after that, I ended up with this other guy who also didn't respect. He kind of manipulated me into believing that my boundaries were what he wanted to do. So it was a lot of high manipulation and a lot of things that even just continued to take down my belief of God, because those were guys who were like, yeah, I believe in God and yada, 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 yet I'm going to do A, B, and C and, you know, mess up your boundaries. So all of that ended up leading into a time of just even greater darkness, because I think at the end of it, I was just so kind of disillusioned by who is God? What do I even believe? What are my boundaries after that time? Where do I draw the lines? The lines are all squiggly and broken, and my heart's broken. What do I do? And then
now, can we pause here? I have a question.
Absolutely.
So when you say it led to greater darkness, what does that mean?
It led into another situation of more hurt and despair than I'd had in any previous situation.
So so the things that you were experiencing were leading you into more experiences that made you feel what? Are we talking alone? Are we like, I know you said, you know, questioning God. So you were questioning, you know, when you're growing up in a religious home and it's kind of being defined for you that God is your anchor, God is your safety, God is your salvation, God is your everything. And then suddenly you're on your own, you're in a household by yourself now, you are not feeling welcomed and cared for in quote unquote God's house, you know, a church, which is supposed to be God's house, right? Which is also a fallacy of religion. But, you know, in that frame of mind, that's kind of what we're thinking, you know, like I'm going to where I should find God and I'm being ignored.
Yeah.
So then we put that on God, right? So like God's ignoring me, God's not showing up for me, God's not welcoming me. I'm a pile of, you know, whatever. And that's, I'm feeling those things because I'm seeing that in other people around me, and I'm kind of experiencing this loneliness, or so like I guess I'm trying to kind of like summarize what the feelings were behind the experiences. Like you're talking about your experiences, and I'm trying to pull out a little bit more emotional wording from you.
Yeah, I think depression was probably one of the biggest things I experienced, but overall it was a big loss of control, a big loss of what I thought I knew. And that was really, what's that kind of word? I'm looking for a word now. Unbalance, I think. Just feeling super unbalanced in myself and super confused because
disoriented.
Oh yeah, because you just have all these beliefs that you're like, oh my gosh, I know that God is love and all these things, and you go through all these things where people say they love you, yet they're just ripping out these pieces of you, and you're like, what do I do? And so it just leaves you feeling disoriented, confused, at a loss of just what is true anymore. What's left? What's left of me? I've been picked apart by so many people at this point. What's left?
Well, and at 18, did you feel like you had a sense of who you were yet?
No, and that was the whole goal. Move out, figure out who I am. And instead, I ended up like being told who I was by more people. And the goal was to get away from that.
Yeah, so like you went from one situation where your parents were defining you and your life and your trajectory out into a society now that was defining your trajectory. And so you were feeling depressed and disoriented, and what was anxiety like for you?
Anxiety was...
When did that kind of kick in for you?
I mean, first of all, at 14.
Still while you're at home.
Yeah. So
but then how did it did it escalate, do you think, when you moved out on your own?
I think...
Or get better?
I think it perhaps got a little worse just because I am super paranoid. So living on your own as a single young lady, a little scary. There was definitely some anxiety there. I think more than anything, it was fear of not knowing. So more than anxiety, it was just a lot of fear of what do I believe? What if I never know what I believe? And what if I never experience the things? Because I think being young and being brand new to being, you know, quote unquote, in the world, you want to have experiences and you want to understand all the things, and, you know, just being afraid of not getting to experience the things of young adult life that everybody wants to, without even knowing what they are. Like, oh, I want to be young and dumb and do all the fun things without even knowing what are the fun things. And, you know, I thought the fun things were, oh, I want to go date somebody. That wasn't fun. Okay. I want to just have this guy friend of mine over at my apartment and just hang out. That also was not fun.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the one thing that was fun that I did when I was, young and dumb, whatever, I went and got burritos with my best friend, and her now fiance, at 2 a.m. Best memory ever. And then I slept for a full 5.5 hours and got up and went to the gym. So that was really, really crazy. But that was the young and dumb moment that I will
That's
forever.
the definition of you're really, really
Yes.
crazy. You've
Yes.
been led a sheltered life. Just saying.
No, literally.
I was craziest thing I did. It was got burritos at 2 a.m. and slept for 5 hours.
So proud.
You're so cute.
It's so funny. It was actually, that was the young and dumb part, that it was actually enjoyable.
You're so innocent, and I love it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, what a blessing.
That was a interesting time. Yeah.
So questioning God, I wrote this down, fear of the unknown. I feel like that's so relatable. Like, I think there's two umbrellas in life, love and fear. And I feel like you could put every emotion underneath one of those. I don't think there's an emotion. I've tried to find an emotion that doesn't fit or have its roots somewhere in one of those.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to. So I feel like those are kind of the big, it's almost like a picture of light and dark to me.
Ooh.
Fear and love. And, we read scriptures that say perfect love drives out fear, and in God there is no darkness at all. Stuff like that. And those things can be helpful, I think, to contrast. Like for me, the way I see them is like they are two entities. They like maybe there is no darkness in love, but love definitely has a relationship with darkness.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I kept feeling in February during our February podcast episodes, when we talked a lot about, love and fear and how they have to go together, or like they are involved or they are within each other some way. I think that's what it is for me, is that they are two unique things that are individual. Like maybe there is no fear in love, but there definitely is a connection and a relationship between the two. Two sides of the same coin, maybe, kind of thing, or but they do somehow feel inseparable in that way to me.
Yeah.
Like I can sit in a moment of pure love and not feel fear at all.
Yeah. I feel like I can't, because I do think that is so true, where sitting in love, you don't experience fear. But I don't know that it's as possible to sit in fear and not feel love, if that makes sense. Because even in the time that I was living in, which was it was filled with fear. It was filled with all the things that fit under the umbrella of fear. Yeah, as I look back, I see the hand of God and the hand of love in my mind. Like, I view God and love as interchangeable, because God is love. So rather than, like, I was running from God as in the church, I was running away from the God that I grew up with, who I thought, he's holding a hammer waiting to smash me if I do something wrong. And I was a mess, so he would have been smashing me. So I was running away from that. Yet as I look back now with my new sense of who God is, I can see that hand in my life, specifically through Chris. He came to be my friend in that time, and ended up moving into the same apartment complex I was in. And the number of nights that I was like alone after work, sad and ugh. And I'd hear a knock at my door, and I'd open it. It was Chris. I was like, hi. And like, just the way that he was at home when he was around me, it made me feel so comfortable. Like, he would come to my house and be like, so what's for dinner? Go look at my fridge. And like, he just kind of
sounds about right.
He just kind of broke down all those social barriers of like, oh, we are friends, and I should ask, can I go look in your fridge? Like, I was raised with a lot of social etiquette, so like the idea of just going and looking in someone else's fridge is, crazy to me, whatever. But he was just so comfortable.
What a Neanderthal.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So even something as silly as that was significant to me.
Yeah, because it's kind of like breaking down structures and rules and, frameworks of things. And it sounds like that's a parallel to what was going on spiritually for you, that you were running away from rules and paradigms and structures and, those kinds of religion, really.
And he kept breaking down those walls. And I think at the time, like, Chris was not a professing Christian. He did not profess to believe in God. Yet God absolutely used him in that time to me. Because what were the things that I believed then? If you have men over to your apartment, bad things are going to happen. But you have to maintain, like, this level of social etiquette with everybody. So like vulnerability and closeness and any kind of intimate friendship or relationship is not possible. And if it is possible, well, the best friends that I had at the time were and still are like super devout believers. And so for me to go up to them and talk to them about the mess that I was experiencing with the social etiquette expectations that I was holding, that was a no-go. I would be literally damned to hell if I did that.
So you were not safe with the friendship. You didn't feel safe with the friendships you had because of the religious sort of tone that everything had over it.
Yeah. And there was a lot of just like, of things that I wasn't allowed to do based on all these weird limiting beliefs in my brain. And Chris just kind of came in and reached in and just kind of was like, none of that matters. What's for dinner? And it was so freeing and so like mind boggling to me. Like, just the time that we spent playing games, whatever, I was always safe. And I could always speak my mind. I could always say what I needed to say. And it was just crazy. Like, I was like, this is possible? Oh. It was a really, really special gift in that time of darkness. And it still felt really dark. I think that's the important thing to note here is like, it wasn't that I was going through this darkness and was like, oh, but Chris is this beautiful angel of light. It did not feel like that. It felt like I have a great friend and I appreciate his company, but it's not till, I mean, we're like 4 years later where I'm looking back and I can see the impact that he made every day. It wasn't like, I just don't want anybody in darkness who's just feeling darkness and not feeling the things of light. It's gonna feel like that, and you're not gonna just suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I just have all these little hands of God in my life. It does not feel like that.
No, it doesn't. So in those, even though, you had these light moments and these people in your life who, were, moments of light for you, how did you navigate that darkness? Like, what were some of your thoughts about when we're in those times of feeling just dark and empty? Do you feel like you had, like, were you trying to not feel those things? Like, were you having any success, or like, what were you trying to do to feel better, I guess? Or like, what would you tell yourself, or like, how did you get through the day? Or
I don't know. I think that's the scary part is I don't know how I got through that time, like partially, because there were a lot of days where I just sat and was like, I feel hopeless. I just don't know how I'm going to get through life. And there were just really hopeless days where I didn't want to go to work, but I had to, or, got to pay rent, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of just kind of robotic movement. Wake up, go to the gym when it was a gym day, because me and Chris were also gym buddies at the apartment gym. Go to the gym, come home, maybe eat breakfast, maybe eat a snack before work, go to work, work at 2 to close, come home, and if Chris was available, he would come over and we'd play some games, and that would be nice. And oftentimes we were both so tired we would just fall asleep after playing games, and honestly sleep like a couple hours into the night. We just fall asleep on the couch and be like zonked. But then, he would wake up and go home, and I would go to bed, whatever. And that was my day every day. And it was like, that was all I could do.
Do you feel like you kind of zoned out then? Like, were you just,
Yeah.
I mean, so I hear you saying you were going through the motions, but were you like, some people do things that, numb the mind, drink, drugs, those kinds of things. Do you feel like you had a thing that you used to kind of zone yourself, like to dissociate, I guess?
I mean, to an extent. I think I tried a lot of little things. Like, I mean, gaming was probably one of them, or just sitting and watching movies forever. Getting lost in the scrolling. That's a big one. That's a big one I still struggle with. Yeah, I definitely tried coping mechanisms, but I think the one that got me the most was the scrolling. Because it's still stuck in me. And I think to an extent, as I've kind of grown out of I need to cope, that part of my life, I've kind of been able to recognize when I can use scrolling and when I can't. Or when I shouldn't, perhaps, because I still do when I shouldn't sometimes. But, maybe there's a time where it's like, okay, it's been a really long freaking day. I cannot process whatever I need to process right now. It is okay. Or like, okay, I'm just avoiding things at this point. We need to take care of something.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't be scrolling at that point in time. So now I can kind of define, okay, here's kind of when I should, here's when I shouldn't.
Yeah, you're sitting in more of an awareness right now.
Yeah. Whether I follow that awareness or not, different story.
Yeah. Being aware is different than,
yeah,
changing your behavior.
But it is the first step, at least, recognizing what's going on.
Yeah. So how long do you feel like that darkness really was kind of pervasive?
I think it was I think it was about a year, now that I think about it. That was a really quick year. Oh my gosh.
And did it just sort of like start to resolve on its own, or did you, like, how did it start? I don't want to get into like the full transformation, but like, what kind of maybe was like the pusher thing that started you on your way up out of it?
So truthfully, it got worse, and that's how it got better. So what ended up happening was
you don't have to get into all that.
Here it comes. There was a complicated situation because at the time of Chris being my friend and we'd hang out a lot, he was dating somebody else, and it just kind of came around at some point, and he was like, oh, I like you. And that became an about 6 month time period, 4 month time period of darker darkness than I had experienced before at all. And
it felt like longer than 4 months.
It did. It felt like years.
It really did.
And that was the breaking point for me, where Chris had been this piece of light that I didn't even recognize. And for that piece of light to be a cause of hurt in my life, to be a cause of confusion, to be not light in that time, it was like I had nothing left. And that was the point where I was like, this is it. I can't take this anymore. If I don't pull myself out, I will drown. And it was March, probably about this time, 2 years ago, I put my foot down and I was like, Chris, I'm not going to hang out with you anymore. I'm not going to spend time with you outside of work anymore, because we also work together. You need to figure your shit out. I'm prepared to move to Texas if things go bad, because my sister lived in Texas, and I was like, I could move to Texas, start working at a Chick-fil-A, live with her for a while, help her take care of her 5 kids. Great.
Just get your bearings.
Yep.
Yeah.
I literally, like, I had never had that thought before of, oh, I'll just move away. And I was like prepared. I would, there were literally days I was like, I need to look at flights to Texas tonight. And I never did. And about a month later, Chris came around and was like, this new person where he had kind of exited his time of darkness, because he was also going through a time of darkness at the time. And he had kind of exited that and prepared new boundaries and prepared his heart in a different manner. And that was kind of the point where I allowed him back into my life, and we kind of started fresh, and we're like, okay, we'll see how everything goes. And then about 2 weeks later, we started dating. And from there, I think not only have I recognized a new God, a new idea of God, but this form of light in my life that was Chris has now kind of smoothed out. And I'm not in such a place where I'm codependent, because I think that was a big issue of why I had to reach that breaking point. Was I was codependent on Chris, because I was drowning in whatever I was going through, and then for him to then also begin to drown, I was like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So for me to now reach a spot where I've got a God of love, I started to get to know you, and I was like, oh, she is supportive. This is great. And so I had a family, and I began to kind of reach out to friends and be like, here's my story. It's a mess. And if you hate it, leave me. I don't care. But wanting to have the genuineness of, here's who I honestly am. If my redemption story is not good enough for you, don't care. I've cut off a friend before. I can do it again. I don't want to, but I was prepared to take care of myself on a different level than ever before. And I was able to because I had the right supports.
And so it was just a matter of kind of getting darker and darker and darker until it just kind of broke. And it was like, okay, it's either turn it around and go a different direction or nothing. Like,
yeah.
This, I hear you. Like there comes a point where you kind of, you hit this spot where you're like, okay, my life's either going to be this or that.
Yep. It really came down to 2 choices, and it was just utter desperation of, I have to save myself before something even worse happens, because I truly can't imagine what could be worse than this, and I don't want to find out.
Yeah. I've been in a place where it feels like it goes beyond that, in a sense, where you don't see 2 options anymore. You only see the one, and you don't see how anything positive could ever come. And you're convinced of it, so much so that life is over. And you really genuinely feel like that is the only option left. So I'm glad that, you were able to come to a place where you still felt like you had 2 choices. And that, you made a choice to turn and start climbing up. I watched the movie Damsel this weekend, and it was pretty cool. She had 2 choices to make, and she was just climbing up. Anyway.
No, I need to
I
watch
just
it.
had this
Write that
picture
down.
of like her climbing up this hole. Like she's at the bottom of this, like almost like if you think like someone dropping down a well, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so like she's at the bottom and there's this hole going up and you can see the sky at the top, but she has to climb all these shards of glass to get out. And it just makes me think about life, you know, like sometimes we're so far down a hole and the way out seems so painful.
Mm-hmm.
The way out and up toward what is light seems impossible. Like, how do I, you know, she's barefoot, she's barely clothed. These are shards of glass, you know, poking out of the walls all around, you know, and she has to climb them and, you know, injure herself in ways on the way up and out. And I feel like it was such a moment of reflection of like, sometimes that's how it feels, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're at the bottom of the pit and it's so dark and you've been down there and it's cold and you're alone and it's like you can kind of see a light maybe, but like the path to get there just feels so impossible. And like you have to put so much effort and so much work, and you know the process of healing, you know, going toward light, right, is like healing. And the process and the things that you have to go through and let go of, the beliefs about yourself that you have to let go of, the beliefs about life and your circumstances and who you really are, and you know, and even the process of developing new ideas about
Oof.
who I am, like all those things can be so painful and
Yeah.
so hard, because in a lot of ways we find so much comfort because we're so familiar. I think for me, like being almost 50 and the, you know, spending so much time in some really dark places, it's almost like there have been times in my life where I've become so comfortable because I'm so familiar with the pain of rejection and the pain of disillusionment, the pain of alone, the pain of you're not enough. Like that is so familiar to me that thinking something else is almost too painful. It's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
I don't know a healed, healthy version of me.
Ooh, yeah.
I don't know what it looks like to think I'm amazing, to think I'm worth something. And that alone is scary. You know, it's like it just sounds so weird. It sounds like, well, of course it would be better than sitting in, you know, depression and anxiety and alone and fear and all that. Like, it's so logical
But
on the outside.
yeah.
But when you're sitting in it, when you're sitting in the fear and you're sitting in the dark and you're sitting in the lonely.
And they say, "Oh, just take a step," and that step is that shard of glass.
The step is the shard of glass sometimes, but it's just like, you know, it's just scary. And so rather than face it, rather than do something brave, rather than have courage, sometimes it's easier just to sit and do nothing and let it just continue to be dark. And that's where I think some people get lost. You know, and I know I've been lost in that place. And so, you know, maybe those are the people we're talking to this month who are kind of stuck in these moments of like, I don't know how I get through the day. I don't know. I don't even remember last week, you know, because I'm so numb, or I'm so disconnected from my own life and my own emotions at this point. I'm just lost in the scroll. I'm lost in the, you know, Instagram scroll or the Facebook scroll or whatever. or I'm lost in drinking, or I'm lost in drugs, or, I'm self-medicating in one way or another, or sex, or, whatever it is, to feel something or to not feel something. Like it can just get that dark. And so I'm hoping and praying that we can, through our sharing of these experiences that we've been in that are similar, our experiences are never going to be the same as someone else. Every individual is unique and has their own pain and their own trauma, but we can see similarities, and we can, at a higher level, identify with one another in just, the empty feelings, the lonely feelings, the sad feelings, and just, make our home with them for a moment, for a time, and just, sit with people. And I guess that's what my hope is for April, is that we can become a place of home and become a place of community with people who are really hurting, but don't want to hurt. They want to see a light at the end of their hole. They want to see something positive, like I want to see light. I've been in that place, like really think about that. Like I want that to be hopeful. So I'm not hopeful, but I wish I was hopeful. I want to be hopeful. I'm open to even wanting to be hopeful, So those are the people I think that are really on my heart, are the ones that are feeling alone and feeling like there is sort of this cloud that sits over them and they don't know how they get through the day. But something in them is calling to them. Something in them is reaching out, and they have some kind of sense that that's there. And they just need help identifying that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Becoming Home podcast. Hey, Jo, where can folks connect with you?
Y'all can reach me at Instagram. My handle is committing_2_change. How about you, Mom?
Yeah, you guys can find me at fullyabundantlife.com. And if you happen to be listening to the audio version of the podcast and you're looking for the video version, head on over to my YouTube channel, Fully Abundant Life. You'll find the podcast there under a playlist titled The Becoming Home Podcast. We appreciate your time so much. We love that you're on this journey with us, and we'll see you next time.